So, as Linda has said, I'm Andrew McKay from BDO. You may have seen my name. I am one of the liquidators that's left on Mainzeal, the last man standing. My two previous partners, Andrew Bethel and Brian Mayo-Smith, actually ran the file for most of it. I've taken over from Brian because Brian's retired, and so has Andrew actually, which is why you may have seen my face on TV or with the Herald or that sort of thing. But all the work was basically done by them and the legal team, but I do know bits about the file, but I don't have the in-depth knowledge that both of them do. So hopefully we can get through that. That's the thing. And also James McQueen, one of the former partners, I'll have to say, James, and now a consultant to our firm, who runs our, used to run our BDO construction site and his construction survey, and has significant construction experience, is also here, because Nick's overseas, isn't he? Who's taken over from Nick and Miss Jones, who's taken over from James. So what we're going to run through, if I get this clicker to work. So in part one, we're going to do pre-insolvency. So we're going to run through what does a good business look like, the construction sector issues and benchmarking data. Some of that's going to come out of the survey that James and his team ran. Some of the warning signs, what we see is what we call the demise curve, which is also a, I'll take through it when we get to it, and protecting yourself working with a company that's in financial distress. So I'm not going to go through this slide in detail, but these are, I have to thank James for this one actually. What we see and the key things that we see or we think is required from a profitable business or a good, robust business in this space is it's profitable. It has a robust balance sheet, strong cash reserves, similar to what Janine was saying, and that sort of thing. You need quality, timely, accurate management, financial reporting and forecasting. We do a lot of work for banks where you only see our names when we're formally appointed, but a large chunk of our work is actually going into businesses that are having some financial problems and having financial stress. And one of the things we see, and the banks put us in, because buried in your lending documents is a clause that says, we, the bank, may require you to appoint an independent accountant. So you end up meeting someone like myself or one of my other peers, and generally an insolvency practitioner, who'll go and they're independent from your other accountant, because the bank sort of has got this sort of feeling, we're not quite happy with your current accountant, let's put someone new in there, have a look. Because of our general experience, we can generally pick up any business. There's not many businesses myself or Reese or any other practitioners in our insolvency practitioners in our firm have not seen or not touched. And we'll go in and we'll review those businesses. But one of the things we see when we're doing that is they've got, some of the ones have poor financial information. They really don't know whether they're making money. You know, and that's a key thing. You do have to invest in your financial reporting systems. I know it's a cost to your business, but unless you know where you are, it's not just how much money you've got in the bank today, it's how much do you owe, how much am I going to collect, when am I going to collect it, am I managing it, am I managing my retentions, am I on top of my retentions, when am I going to collect them? Right, we've seen ones where we're going, well, why have you still got all these retentions, why haven't you collected those? Oh yeah, we've got to get around to those. Where's your bring up process? Where's your system to do that? I mean, it all sounds basics, but financial reporting and financial management is actually basic. You don't need an MBA to do it. You don't need to be an accountant to do it. It's just good business practice. It's common sense, most of it. Am I getting my money when I'm due to be paid? Am I keeping an eye on it? Is someone in my team chasing that person up, chasing to get paid? That's what you need to do, because that gives you money. And as I say even to my own team, and Jacob here, we used to be in it, you know, it's a circle of life. I've got to get paid in order to pay you. You know, it's the same cycle that everyone has to go through. You've got to chase your money. And the other key ones that we see, you've got to understand your pricing, understand the risk that you're taking on for that pricing. These are the really key points. And probably lastly, if you do strike trouble or you're having difficulties, reach out to, you know, specialist insolvency practitioners to come in and give you that horrible talk, or go, yep, we think you do have a problem. These are some of the steps we need to take, but do it early, as we'll come to. Right? If you leave it too late, it's too hard. Right? It's easier to go and ask for help. Even ask your bank and say, I'm having a few problems here at the moment. Ask your accountant, because even though they might be a normal business advisory accountant, a normal practitioner that doesn't deal in this sort of work, they will know someone like us. They don't like saying that they know people like us, but then most of them do. And we'll come and give you the hard thing and go, yeah, this is okay, or you better sort this out, otherwise you'll meet us with a different hat, or someone like us. The key sort of thing also in here is you need to have a good pipeline of work, which Janine sort of touched on, and how that's sort of balanced up. And also she's already touched on some of the points like key developer risk or key financier risk. You don't have all, it goes back to simple basics. In basics here in investing, don't have all your eggs in one basket. Right? You might make less money, but you will continue to make money. Because if you've got everything with Tom Smith's financier and he's financing with, ABC Bank, and ABC Bank says, oh, we're out of building, we're out of construction. Oh, okay, so all those projects stop, what are you going to do? So you just, diversification is quite key, certainly from my viewpoint. Some of the things you're going to see on this downward spiral, you're going to get low margins, delayed projects, staff shortages, which you're probably experiencing. Quality issues, councils. I'm also still the receiver and still involved with Cowrail building, which is down at the Hilton down in Queenstown. Another file I've taken over from other people retiring. And we're currently doing a rebuild on all our bathrooms there, 100 of them. And some of the issues that we're seeing out of that are quite challenging on how it was built and some other bits and pieces. So I've learnt more about construction in the past 3 months, very detailed construction than I ever really wanted to know. About dross backs and fire and passive fire than I really wanted to know. So, fragile businesses, we see this a lot. They're juggling their cash flows. They start cutting corners on materials, cutting corners on work. The work becomes poor quality, and they start being slow to pay others. Then when you start breaching your bank covenants, you will generally meet people like us, or you're on a very quick spiral down the curve. IRD is, please pay the IRD. I know none of us like paying tax, but you need to pay your PAYE. All right, it is a criminal offence if you don't pay it. We've seen some horror stories in the past couple of years, or past year, and it is quite concerning the amount when the government was being kind that the IRD hasn't pursued. There are a lot of businesses out there, to my mind, and probably James and Jacob, who's also here from our firm, if you can't pay your PAYE, your business is fundamentally unsound, right? Because it's not your money. It's your employers' money that you're holding on trust that you should be paying to the government. All right, GST, that'll be a bit more thing, but PAYE is definitely not your money. You're also holding GST on trust, but PAYE, government sees that and the courts see it as a criminal offence, and they are moving on it now, finally. We get frustrated by the fact, and the banks don't like it. If you go into the bank and say, oh, I've got problems, and I'm now $1 million behind on my PAYE, they're not going to be very happy with you, right? Especially if you haven't told them this. And there are surprises that they see, and we're seeing numbers like that with problem clients, problem companies. Not in this industry, but across some various industries. Has anyone got any questions on any of the points on that slide before I shift across from it? Or anything else you want to add on that, James? Cover the most? Yeah. So most of these things come out of, or were they touched on in our construction survey thing? Has that gone out? That's gone out, hasn't it? Yeah. Yeah. So construction sector issues and benchmarking. So why don't you talk to this, because you've done this.
So we've been running our construction survey for 6 years now. The themes have changed over time. The preceding slide, we put that together as a summary of our first construction survey, and that has been absolutely true. After that, just different issues become more important. If we go back a year or so, it was inflation, it was closed borders, it was access to staff. We're moving through that period now. The emerging issue that we're starting to see now is not enough forward work. And companies are going to have to be smaller in the future than they are now. And the key question is how they actually transition to be a little bit smaller and how they carve their overheads without falling into the red zone very, very quickly. Staffing is easing off. What we're seeing now is that some companies have got, as they're finishing projects, they've got a few extra staff, they're letting a few staff go. So it is easier now to find staff than perhaps it was at Christmas time. Inflation's still there. Pipeline is a real concern to me, as I said, because there's less forward work out there, and the stuff that people are grabbing tends to be quite low margins, and therefore it's not going to get you out of the poop if you're already in the poop. If we go across to the left-hand side, the benchmarking, we benchmark about 30 head contractors. So they're all like for like, and it's all vertical and all head contractors. And basically the average margin in the March 22 year was 11%. There's a range. There's some that are sort of down in the 3%, and there's some that are in the 20s, not many. But so for those in construction companies in the room here, have a look at your accounts. If BDO's your client, if BDO's your accountant, great. You've got a very detailed benchmarking report to look at. If not, your margins ideally should be north of 11%. Overheads, again, there's a range there from about 3% through to north of 11%, but the midpoint is about 6.3. What worries me about overheads is if I go back if we go back a couple of years before that, then overheads were sort of in the 4.5 to 5, and overheads have been creeping up. Now, if turnover comes down and people can't cut their overheads, in dollar terms, what used to be overheads at 6% of your turnover is going to become 8% when you're trying to pick up jobs at 4% margin, and you'll be talking to Andrew very, very quickly. Midpoint of our benchmarking is cash is about 11% of turnover. Now you need cash for holding trust for retentions, you need it for your bonding, and most people have negative work in progress. And as jobs come to an end, that negative work in progress unwinds and it swallows cash real fast. And I think, towards the end of this year, Andrew will probably see a few companies that as jobs ease off, negative work in progress unwinds, turns into cash outflowing, people just simply run out of cash.
Thank you. And as James has noted, I've noted there, small companies generally above the average, and residential should be above that. Warning signs. Project delays, creditors are outside terms, so whether you're no matter where you are on the train, so if the developer's not paying you, or you're not paying your subcontractors, or subcontractors not being paid, everyone starts to have problems. As I mentioned, overdue taxes, work quality issues, or you're involved with Janine or people in her firm where you're in litigation because of claims for and against you. You've got declining gross margins. Litigation, no matter where you are in that cycle, and I'm sure the lawyers will confirm this, choose cash, choose time, it distracts you from your business. All right, it just takes your mind away from building things or doing things. All right, it's a necessary evil at times, but it distracts you. You've got declining gross margins, you've ongoing losses, you've got poor cash flow, you're not meeting your budgets, generally not capitalised strongly enough, you don't have enough equity. And as Janine was sort of saying, and James will back it up, assets and liabilities, equity just becomes a balancing figure. All right, assets will go up and come down as liabilities sort of stay the same, or they keep growing, and the equity just gets balanced out and can go backwards and can be negative. Not good when it's negative. Once again, poor financial information, using standard profit margins. We've seen a fair bit of that this year. You keep booking things on a standard profit margin, you're not adjusting those to the reality of your work in progress, or recognising the actual profit on the job as you're going through. You're just holding to your standard. You suddenly get to the end of the job and, we didn't make that, and you lose. You've lost that much money, and it's real money. We're seeing, and there are times we're seeing large year-end adjustments. Now, most of you probably won't have seen this curve, because you'll have seen this when a company is on the company life cycle, and you'll see the other side of this curve, which the company's growing and it's start up and it moves up the next phase and goes that and it gets and it carries on. Most of the time you're hoping that it runs along parallel, business transformation. What we call as a demise curve is when you're running into trouble, and this is the other side of it, of the company life cycle, right? It goes down. So we have the early warning signs we've touched on already. We've got profit decline, we've got cash outflows, we've got worsening financial ratios, current ratios, and you're running out of cash. You still have a bit of time if you're at the top point of this curve. You need to then start talking to your bankers, start getting on top of your cash, start talking to people like us or our competitors and that sort of thing. Start figuring out ways to start churning and getting and generating more cash. You get rid of jobs that are not working, so get away out of them without getting sued. If you've got an increasing crisis, as you're going further and further down this curve, you're loss making. So we can, if we get to talk to you at the top of the curve, you've got an ability to change and restructure your business, and you can do a business transformation. And you become something else, so you might become smaller and leaner, and you're just doing this type of work, and you carry on. If you don't, and you keep slipping down, you'll see the curve starts to get slipperier and steeper and steeper, and it's slipperier. It's harder to come back from. You're loss making, you've got cash constraints, you've got little room to manoeuvre. Then the last part, on the third or the far left of the slide, you've got heavy losses, you've got failure, you've got cash shortfalls, and inevitably you will fail. And there will be a liquidator, an administrator, or a receiver taking charge. You need to be in the top two bits if you are starting to have problems. You need to talk to people. It's not a mission. If I want to come build a house, I'm going to come and talk to people like yourselves. I know that's very simple, or build a building. I can't build a house. I have no idea. All right? Even though my son's a builder, but he tells me regularly I know nothing. So, how do I protect myself with working with a business in financial distress? You obtain a perfected security interest that traces through the debtors. One of the worst things, construction companies are one of the worst ones to be a receiver of. You don't have debtors, you don't have inventory generally, and everyone disputes the debtors because they start arguing with you, and it's a real battle to get any money out of the principals or anyone who owes you money, or they counterclaim against you. So it's a real battle for us. Don't extend further credit. This is what I was going to before. Be ruthless about the credit that you're extending. If you're not being paid, talk to Janine or Sean or someone like that. You need to be ruthless. Okay, don't extend credit too far. All right, you will get caught. If people say, I'm going to pay you, or put them on stop credit, cash on, or they've got to cut you a deal. All right, you need cash. You need cash. All right, if you get paid, don't go past previous limit. Reduce the credit limit over time. Diarise payments. Chase them. All right, these are all little simple things, but they are things you should do. If you're worried about avoidable preference it's an insolvent transaction, seek legal advice, talk to someone like Sean or Janine, but probably still take the money. All right, you'll fight with someone like us after the event. All right, don't hand over producer statements. All right, be ruthless with those. All right, that's your bargaining tool. Even when you're facing the liquidator and they want them, you're going, well, I'm not giving them until I'm paid. Cut a deal, force it. Use your lawyer to help you force that situation. Hold those producer statements. Get personal guarantees from principals outside of the company. And take security outside of the company. It might already be secured up to the eyeballs anyway, they may be, but it's a way to try and get an ability to try and seek recovery against people. Think very hard before taking over someone else's work, right? There's big risk to yourself if someone's done something and they've walked off and they're not coming back and they're trying to get you to do the work. Have a good think whether you want to take on that risk. And I think that's me for part one.